I'd like to start. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for one more session on the Astrobiology Webinar. Our today's speaker is Dr. Binita. She is from BSIP Lucknow. She is the first Indian woman scientist to do expeditions on both the polar regions, Arctic and Antarctic. And she had spent several years working on Ladakh geology. So there is more we can learn from Dr. Binita. So I will leave it to our speaker today. And we'll welcome the speaker. Thank you, Dr. Binita, for accepting our invitation.
So thank you. Yeah, shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Valla, for inviting me to speak on this platform. I was just saying that it's a really good web series where we have heard such good speakers. And I hope I do justice to that, the series. So I would be talking about the terrestrial analogue of Mars, especially in reference to Ladakh, which is a cold, arid desert. So I've been studying in this region for the last 2 decades. So, and basically I'm a geomorphologist and a paleoclimatologist. But my interest in this, in the red planet got, 2-3 years back, where I thought, my experience with the geomorphological studies could help in knowing what the red planet is like. So I would like you to please see this picture that I've put in on the screen. So, a kind of a crater wall and some kind of these lines that could be fluvial lines. And I'll come to this picture a few slides later. So to get started, what are analog sites? So basically, as per definition, Mars analog sites, they are defined as places on the Earth that share one or more either physical, chemical, or geological similarity with the Martian environments, either current or the past. So by definition, it's the analog sites are these. These are also known as terrestrial analog sites. Some call it space analog sites or analog sites. So why is it important to have these analog sites? Because they help us to understand the geological processes on the surface of the Earth, which we can extrapolate to the other systems, bodies like the Mars, or interpret the data and validate the data which is received from the orbiters, the planetary rovers, etc. They are also important for optimizing scientific and technological needs and exploration strategies in robotic and manned missions to Mars. Then some sites, they are good. They are best suited for exobiological research or to train sampling methods and do field exploration. Some other sites are good to prepare the astronauts, to prepare them for the difficulties of the future space missions. So, there are different sites in the Earth that are chosen for these analogs. For example, this is the desert location of Utah, USA. There is this Mars analog habitat is there, which is known as the Mars Desert Research Station. And here what they do is they prepare the astronauts, they prepare the engineers and the scientists for the future challenges in sending these manned missions. So here is one of our little astronauts, Anushri Srivastava, who's working with her spacesuit on in this desert. So here, they are they do the engineering operations, as well as they test their rovers and all, as well as they do the scientific research, and they are in isolation. They are like in no man's land. They are not in connect with the outer world. So, and they the confinement kind of thing is there, and then their diet is also very different. Like they would have frozen foods, and so they're preparing themselves for these manned missions. So for science, for engineering, for operations, these analog sites are very important for testing, and then their many research stations have been built. There is a list of research stations that have been analog research stations. We have many in USA, Canada, Spain. We also have one in Antarctica, and in Arctic also Flashline. And then these are the sites like where the hot springs are, where the craters are. Undersea also we have in the deserts, in the lava flows. And there are analog research stations all over the world. So to become a research station, to become an analog, to be called an analog, there is a fidelity check. So what is this? Fidelity is it describes the resemblance of the analog to its extraterrestrial correspondent. So here we are talking about Mars. So how much that area or that region looks like the surface of the Mars. Second is Fidelity is used in comparative planetary science to express the analogy of the terrestrial science to that of the target, that is Mars. So there are three classifications, and it's based on the three different criteria. That is the geomorphology. Geomorphology is basically the surface features. And then the geochemistry. Geochemistry is more like the rock type, what the constituent of the rock and what is it made of. And then the exobiological are the exploration conditions. So there has to be a fidelity test before you can call any region as an analog for Mars. So now we'll come to whether Ladakh is the terrestrial analog for Mars. So we need to have a geomorphological fidelity, then the geochemical, exobiological, and exploration conditions fidelity. So we all know that Mars is the red planet. It's cold, it's dry, it has a rocky ground. There is lots of loose rock. We have permafrost and frozen water, rock glaciers, etc. So let's see, and the rock types are basically quartz and shales and volcanic rocks. And we also have evidence of permafrost in Mars. So there are many people all over the world are doing very good research on the Mars and the data sent by the orbiters and the rovers. So we would see Ladakh now. Okay, before that, where can we find Mars in India? India, as we know, is a subcontinent which has different physiographic regions. So and they're so different from each other. We have this, the Himalayan belt. Then we have the desert in the west and the run of Kutch. We have the Deccan Plateau basalts in the central part, the Indo-Gangetic plain here. We have a beautiful long coastline and the ocean and the seas. So to study Mars, there could be several regions in India, but I've just put 5 pictures here. So, the desert, the western desert, Thar makes a very good analog. Then the marshy land of the run of Kutch, it makes a very good analog. Then lunar crater, it's a crater on basalt, which was on news a few weeks ago for its microbial bloom when it turned pink. So it is a very good analog to study the craters of Mars. And then in the Andaman, we have these stromatolites, which are the first organisms, very primitive organisms, billions of years ago, which were the first kind of life on Earth. So you can study that. And then, of course, the Himalayas. So I would concentrate on this cold, arid desert, Ladakh. Okay. Why Ladakh? Because, when you see Ladakh, if you see the pictures, if you've been to Ladakh, you would see that, you're not in the earth. There's no vegetation, high altitudes. It's so dry. It's so different from, the topography itself is so different from, the rest of the tropical India. And Ladakh is a part of the cold arid desert here. All this light pink is the cold arid desert. This is the Köppen's climate classification. So all these deserts, whether they are hot or cold, they make very good analogs. So this the red here are the hot deserts of the world, and this is the cold desert. And of course, we have these the Arctic and the Antarctic as the cold deserts also. So these are very good sites for studying the Mars kind of environment there. So this is a picture that I said I'll come to you later. So this is what I said is the inner crater wall of Mars. But no, this is Ladakh. This is Ladakh, a picture from Ladakh. You could have missed this little gentleman here who is our colleague from GSI, Dr. Khande. So this is, when just right bank of Indus River, somewhere near Sispur, you see this kind of a deposit. So this is near a Paleolake site that we are working in, and all these, the channels. But there is so much resemblance of the topography to what we know about Mars, or what we see in Mars. So, as far as planetary exploration in context of geological and geomorphological research is concerned, we can explicitly understand it and well interpret it only when the processes of our terrestrial surface of our planet Earth, that is, are well studied and understood. And there is so much resemblance in the topography of Ladakh and Mars. So if we understand the processes here, I think it would be very easy for us to interpret what is going on in different parts of Mars. So on Mars, we already know that there are several papers that it has cratered highlands of moderate to high relief. Then there are isolated knobs and massives and rugged mountains and extensive tracts of smooth and channeled plains. There are many outflow channel systems. There are river logs. There are oxbow lakes, etc. So all these are suggestive of the mass movements, the landslides, the catastrophic floods, the active fluvial processes, the erosional and the depositional work of the wind, water, and ice. So, and we all are, we all have heard these terms, mass movement. We all know that, we see it. We see landslides. We see catastrophic floods as in Assam and all. So all these, we know them and we know the processes. So it's an easy comparison for us to do on the Mars surface. And moreover, when we deal with the hard rock, we know that, Pathfinder chemical analysis indicate high silica rocks implying differentiated parent material. So this can also be really studied. So the Earth's surface processes can build a very strong upsurge for interest for space programs, and geologists and geomorphologists can make significant contributions to space exploration because of the background and experience in the earthy forms, their constituents, and their processes. So with this, I come to Ladakh, which is a new union territory. So this is Ladakh. And basically, Ladakh has this river called Indus here, and it joins, the other rivers. This is Pakistan. This is Pakistan occupied, although we claim it. So we work in this region. And whatever I'll show you of this region. Okay, Ladakh is basically a part of the third pole. I don't know how many of you know about the third pole. Third pole is a region that encompasses the Himalaya, the entire Himalayan range, the Hindu Kush here, and the Tibetan Plateau. So all this green here is the part of the third pole, this big thing. And third pole is very important because, it has about 46,000 glaciers. It is feeding 20% of the world's population by its 10 major rivers that are originating from the third pole or around here. So whether it be the Indus River or the Ganga River here, and the Brahmaputra, Irrawaddy, and Mekong, Salween, Yellow River, and so on, Amudarya this side, and Tarim here. So this is the third pole. The third pole itself is a very, it's land of socioeconomic diversity. Its biodiversity is there, cultural diversity is there. It's very, the altitudes are very high in this region, especially the Tibetan Plateau, above 3,000 meters above sea level. So it has a different peculiar, and so many glaciers and freshwater reserve. It's called third pole not because it has some kind of a magnetic field or something, but it has the largest reserves of fresh water outside the polar regions. So that is why it's known as the third pole. So now, because any part of the third pole, even the Tibetan Plateau and all, they can become very good analog sites for, to study some portion of Mars. So I come to Ladakh. So when we see, this is the geological map. I'm showing you the geology because of the rock type here. So this is all, we know that, Ladakh and in this area, it is because of the Himalayan orogeny. Not to go into the details, but I just want to show here that, we have all forms of rock type that are exposed in Ladakh, whether they are igneous rocks. They are both types. The extrusive ones, like the Dras volcanic rocks. All this red here is Dras volcanic rocks here. Then we have the volcanic rocks of Khardungla and Lazarmo here. And then we also have the intrusive ones like the Plutons, the huge batholith here. Batholith is basically granitic rock here. And then we also have sedimentary rocks of the Indus Formation, which are conglomerates and silts and sands. And we also have the flysch and molasse deposits. We have very nice ophiolithic rocks, which are rocks representing the oceanic crust and the upper mantle. So you really cannot go that deep, but those rocks we can find in Ladakh. So a variety of rock type is seen in Ladakh, which can be studied, and these have been emplaced, in different time spans, right from 67 million years, and then the orogeny started about 40 million years, and then the sedimentary things came up, and so on. So you have a long history of the orogeny right from when the Indian plate it subducted the Asian plate. So the area, if this is the DAM, if we just fly from Delhi to Leh is the the main town in Ladakh. So what do we see? So Delhi is at about 200 meters above sea level, and then we just go and we see the Shivalik range, which has mountains of 800, 900 to 1200, then lesser Himalayas, high Himalayas, and we go up, and then we find we have a big zone of the Janskar or the Tethan Himalayas, and then we come to the Trans-Himalayas, where Leh is there, where the Ladakh region, which we are talking about. So you can see that, the altitudes are above 5,000 meters above sea level. So here, even the air pressure is like low. We don't have oxygen here. And the oxygen that we find in near the sea level is like 21%. Here we would have something like 8 to 10%. So you have difficulty in breathing and all. So this is the area of extreme. So what makes it so different is that it receives precipitation from the winds from the Central Asia, the Caspian Sea, Mediterranean Sea in the winter months as snow. Okay, and the rest of India is receiving rainfall nowadays, like July, August, September, and the Himalayan front is blocking all the moisture-laden winds. So this is a rain shadow zone. Basically, it's a rain shadow zone. But in case we have an intense summer monsoon, so this penetrates into this Ladakh region and the Tethan Himalayan region this side, and it can play a havoc there because there is in these places there is lots of loose rock, and I'll just come to it in the next slide. So basically, the precipitation is just 36 to 250 millimeters here, and it makes it a desert, a cold, arid desert. So when we see the major geomorphic landforms, so we have nice U-shaped valleys, we have lots of debris cones, debris deposits, alluvial fans, moss grounds, we have some lakes, some glacial lakes also, and we have these big lakes, saline lakes, and alluvial fans and two cutting of the river, deflected streams, and Paleolake sediments, and so on. So this is basically when you go and you see Ladakh, we have these geomorphic landforms there. We also have lots of loose rock and folds because it is very high and it's cold, and then it is covered with snow in the winter months, like 6 months at least. Some regions like Dras, they are the coldest regions in India, which have recorded temperatures as minus 23 as an average temperature. So you can imagine, the cold there. So because of that, the physical weathering is there in action, lots of physical weathering, which really, breaks these rocks into pieces, and, the entire slopes are they're filled with these loose rocks or the debris deposits like this. And the hard rocks, you can see a beautiful folds here, which tell you the stories of the compression, north-south compression of the Indian plate when these mountains were formed here. So basically, the geomorphology is very similar to that what we find in the red planet. Now, we have evidences that water was present in Mars in the form of oceans, ice caps, glaciers, lakes, rivers, flood outbursts, groundwater, and cryosphere. So let's see where in Ladakh can we see something, the processes that are similar to that of Mars. So in my coming slides, I'll just show you some examples and compare the features of Mars and what we see in Ladakh. So I'll just come just one feature each, and because there are n number of examples, otherwise we'll run out of time. So the alluvial fan deposits. So this was a paper by Cyril Mack in 2013, and in this Hellas region of this crater, he's beautifully marked this alluvial fan here. And not only in one here crater, there are many, even in this region where the Peace Valleys of where the Curiosity lander site is there. So there also you find very good alluvial fans. And similar fans you can see in Ladakh. This is some in the Shyok Nubra Valley, and you can see how the alcove and how many channels coming to form this lobe here as alluvial fan. So if we know the processes of these several alluvial fans, we would we can just extrapolate our inferences to the alluvial fans found in the inner crater walls of Ladakh, of Mars. Sorry. Then coming to the second part is the gullies. So in these two pictures, you can see the gullies. This is Ladakh, of course, and here what is happening, because as I told you that there is snow covered. Snow covers all this during the winter months, and then when melting takes place, so there are these gullies formed. So these are due to the melting in this particular picture, and this is again these Martian gullies where there are channels, there are gullies, and then when the slope is steep, so they just there is an apron or lobes or an interfingering lobes that are seen in this particular picture. There is there was a comparison. Between the Ladakh gullies, the Ladakh alluvial plains, by that of the Domini and the Maricotte crater on Mars by Sinha et al. 2018. It's a very good paper in the Geological Society of London. It's a special issue on the Mars gullies and their analogues on Earth. So this is from PRL, and there also in these craters also they've seen such kind of deposits and such kind of features in these craters. Then we come to groundwater sapping. It is again seen in many of the pictures that we get from Mars. So what is happening is that in the headwaters, there, due to constant flow of water at a certain point, the finer material is getting removed, and then the ground is just sapping down. So you have these kind of features that are seen. And in Ladakh, if you go, you can see anywhere where there is a soil, and you see some kind of a finer material, and then you see all these groundwater sapping things being formed in the upper surface. Coming to cross-bedding, this is a very beautiful paper by Sarkar et al. 2019, last year. And what they were studying these cross-beddings and the light tone mounds of the Giovantes Chasma So they've marked some in the very high resolution images. They marked these cross beds. I'm sorry, the picture is not very clear, but yeah, they have done they've marked these cross beddings, and similar cross beddings we were studying in Leh. This is the Spituk section, we call it. We are basically doing it for paleoclimate studies and the chronology studies of the Paleolake. This is basically a fluvial lacustrine section, and in the fluvial part you see very good cross beddings that could be correlated to the cross beddings found in the Juvante chasma. So so many resemblance of alluvial fans, of gullies, of water sapping, of cross bedding, and now coming to the meandering channels. So this is again, you can see the old channel here, and you can see the Oxbow Lake this side, the scroll bars, and how the river would have flown like this. But today, but now it's the old channel. This is a picture of the Mars, and this is the scale here. And in Ladakh, you could see these meander channels. You could see the mountain cracks, and you can also study the
Hello.
Very evident on the Mars surface here, and many authors have have researched on it. And this is again, I've taken it from Sarkar et al. 2019. So they have reported the debris flow in the Juvante chasma again, and the inner valley wall. So and similar kind, and they have compared it to the similar kinds that we see in Ladakh, the debris chute, which is very similar to the light tone mound in the Juvante chasma. Apart from these debris flow, that debris flow was at an high angle slope. We also have debris flows at a low angle slopes here. So here the slope is slightly less. So its example was we found one debris flow near the Pangong So Lake, and it was very recent, 3 years back, when a huge mass of that debris came with a slush of water, and it also blocked the road that was going to the Pangong So, which is a very known tourist spot. So here we try to map it and all, and you can see what intensity would have that debris flow would have had. Look at this, the size of the boulder here. It's huge boulders also came just rolling up from this place, and it just when the slope was less, it just spread like a fan. So these debris flows can be studied. So these were some of the processes that we see in Ladakh, which are easily comparable to the surface of the Mars. Now let us come to the environments, because this is astrobiology, and where would we look for photosynthesizing microbial communities if we go to Ladakh, So in Ladakh area, there are several glacial lakes because of contemporary deglaciation, and warming. So lots of deglaciation is taking place. Glaciers are getting, are retreating. In fact, the entire Ladakh range, we see no active glacier as of today. There are only ice patches. So in summers, if you go, all the peaks are they're barren. There are hardly any glaciers now. So, but now these glacial lakes have started to come up. So we can study astrobiology, things, the photosynthesizing microbial communities in these glacial lakes. Then we also have these saline lakes there. So the hypersaline lakes also, like the Soker in one of the pictures I just showed you. So, and then we have hot springs. So we'll just rush through them in the coming slides. So okay, these are pictures of Ladakh. This is March, where even the waterfalls, they're frozen, and this is the places where we can look for the psychophiles, which are organisms that thrive at very low temperatures. So all these glacial lakes, they are frozen in the winter months, but as spring comes, not spring but summers, in that region, June, July, August, we can see some water activities, and we can see some life there. These are some blue, red, green algae here. So these are the best places then to study the low temperature microorganisms. So in one of the studies here, what we conducted, that we were sampling the surface samples of all these microenvironments. Like this is the lake here, and this present lake is here, and we just sample all around the lake. Then we sample some pools and some dry pools and the channel, the main channel, and the other channels also. So we had some different micro environments in one place, and then we studied that. And what we see is then overall distribution shows the dominance of Thecamabians. Thecamabians are present; they are heterotrophs. So this lake is not because if it's a primary lake, we would have more of the autotrophs. So there are Thecamabians here, and then algae, the diatoms are also 26%. We also had a lot of fungal spores and cysts that were found here, and also some of these pollens of the trees, pinus and abies, that don't grow here because Ladakh is above the tree line. So no trees grow there. Only in the valleys people have planted trees now, but they are not the natural trees. So where from do we get these pollens in the sediment record? Is from the west, from the Jammu area, and by the wind, and then from the south, from Himachal, that's coming here in our records. So these are the pictures under the microscope of the diatoms here, different varieties of diatoms and Thecamabians, and the pollen and spores that were found here. They're put in this plate from this particular lake. It's called the Changla Sultak Lake, we call it. Then coming to the soil. Yeah. So as I said, that Ladakh is frozen at around like 4 to 6 months a year. So you have these polygonal structures because of freeze-thaw weathering in the periglacial regions. So if you have a closer look at them, so you can see that the bigger rocks are placed in a polygonal shape, and the soil is here. So even we see such things in the Martian surface here. It is a high-res image from NASA. And here what we see, there are big polygons and there are smaller ones inside. So strong winds and freezing temperatures, they drive the soil formation process. And we know that the temperature variation above and below the soil, it drives this periglacial process and accelerates weathering. And then the wind and the water action, it takes away erodes the finer particles and then redistributes it, forming these things. So we can really study how the soil is formed, and then we can study the Martian soil also. A very important thing is the permafrost, and you would be surprised to know that when I said that in the entire third pole region we have 46,000 glaciers, and you won't it's a fact that the permafrost in this entire region is of the it's about if I get the figure right, it's about 3,750,000 square kilometers. The permafrost is there. And if we just compare it of what it is like, it is the half of the glacial, at least half of the glacial glaciers that we have in this region, glacial water. It's something like that. So in that extent, the permafrost is there. But because of this warming, we are having an effect on that also, because permafrost that was found at levels of 30 centimeters, 50 centimeters, it's really going down. So during our studies, because we study the lake sediments, and we do a sampling, downcore sampling. So after 80 centimeters, and it depends on place to place, we really get into this frozen zone. Permafrost is basically a frozen soil or frozen rock which has remained below freezing points for several years, at least 3 years. So below this like you cannot dig, even your machines cannot dig below that. So this is permafrost, and the layer above the permafrost and between the atmosphere and the permafrost layer is the active layer, where all the activities like the grass is growing, and there'll be some microbial activity and plant life and whatever. It takes place in this active zone. So what we are seeing that the permafrost is shrinking in extent as well as in thaw depth as a response of weathering. And if we see it in the future, like by the end of the century, the permafrost layers would go down to even 3 meters. It's like the models tell us so. So it's like really in danger. And permafrost is a very good reserve of water, fresh water in our this high altitude desert. Now I come to the hypersaline lakes. This is Sokar again, and so Sokar is this crust is all salt, and just when you dig below, then you find this lake sediment and the permafrost coming out. So we can study the halophiles which thrive in the saline conditions in these kind of environments, and Sokar is a salt lake, and it is situated in southern Ladakh, and it's extreme temperatures. So in winters it would be something like minus 40 degrees. In summers it would be like 30 degrees. And once upon a time, like when the ethnic communities used to reside here, they used to export salt from here to Tibet. So you can just imagine the salinity of this place. But what is happening is like Sokar is really shrinking. Today it's two lakes are seen like this, but initially this lake was very big, and today at some portions you can just see a wetland, these moss mounds and all. At some places you can see the saline part, at some portions you see the lake water, and also the Paleolake deposits. So when you just, because it's a huge body of like about at least 25 kilometers if you could just go here and around. So you could see terminal moraines there, terraces, and paleo shorelines, because the water once upon a time would have been here. So this is a very good have happened in Mars during the Hesperian stage, like 3.7 to 2.9 billion years in Mars. So because we find evidences of such things, of water, of lakes, of oceans in the Mars surface. Then the other type of environment from the cold and saline is the hot water springs. So Ladakh, as we say, as I just told you, that it is geologically, techtonically very active. So there are lots of suture zones and faults along this because it's a part of the Himalayan orogeny. So lots of compressional and extensional forces have been acting here. So there are lots of fault lines that bring out the warm water from the deep crust and over to the surface. And this water is boiling hot. This is like 80 degrees, 75 degrees, and so on. So here in this hot springs, and there are many. There are the Puga Valley is filled with hot springs. This is the hot spring at Panamik. Then we have just on the right bank of river Indus in Chumathang area, there's a hot spring. So there are several hot springs. These are the main ones, but there are many others also. So these are where the thermophiles or the high temperature organisms would be found. So this is a very good environment for microbiologists to study the thermophiles. So Ladakh is a place where the geomorphology is so much like Mars. And then we have environments also where you can study these extremophiles, whether they are psychophiles, thermophiles, or halophiles, because of this environments which a number of varied type of environments that it houses under one roof, we can say. So, and then it's not finished there. It has several other features like the dunes. So it's not the Western Desert, but this like the desert in the north, which has very nice dunes. And these dunes are not small. These like this height could be about anywhere between 40 to 60 meters, and between these are the somewhere we find these interdunal lakes also in between when the water table is high enough. So I'll just come to the next picture. And these are some of the pictures from the NASA Spaceward Bound India program 2016. So this is one of the dunal, little lake body that is developed with a small basin just under the dune steeper face, and you can see mud cracks over it, and then you can also see the cross bedding on the sand here. So you know how the lake is formed, and it's a pool. If we won't call it a lake, we would call it a pool of water. And then how is it formed by the rising groundwater or precipitation in this area, and how do they disappear is something that we can study. And the mineralogy of these, obviously it has to be 100% quartz. So we have lots of quartz, very few, very less of silt and clay, 2% and 1%, and very less of this organic content. So it would be very hard to find the microorganisms, but still we can look for them in this 1% organic matter that we are seeing in these dunes. I would show you this picture of Lamayuru. Lamayuru is a Paleolake deposit. It is at a height of more than 4,000 meters, and it was a lake, a kind of a glacial lake, in a periglacial terrain like this, and it existed. We have dates of it. 36,000 years before present to 26,000 years before present. Okay, so this lake maybe lived about for 10,000 years, and then it, due to some tectonic reason or whatever region, this just got breached away. Today we find the sediment of that lake. Of course, it's eroded, and it's all slumped and sapped, and you can see new drainages coming up. So this is because of this last 20,000, as it has remained as such. So I'm showing you this because I want to emphasize on a point that Ladakh has a lot of such lakes where a very fine material like silt and sand and fine sand and clay material is there on the surface, and this would lead. And then we have the rivers which have a lot of sediment load, especially when melting is taking place. So these rivers are like brown in color. So with that kind of sediment load, so and which spreads over its flood banks. So we have so much of fine grained material, which and these scenes like this, the dust devils are lots there. So Ladakh is also a very windy place. After 2:00, it's very hard, to work there, to do field work there. So because it's very windy, and you can see this is very small one which was clicked, but there are several of these, that were dancing all over. You can see in the landscape, these dust devils are dancing and redistributing the sediment from one place to another. And when they find an obstacle, like here, the mountain has come, the bedrock has come on the way, so they form these ramp-like deposits. So every year, the sand is coming and depositing like this, and these ramps are getting bigger and bigger until they've come till the crest of this this mountain. This is the Ladakh batholith, or the granitic rock that is seen near Leh. Okay, so dust devils are also very common. So coming to the few more slides, but saying that Ladakh is a barren, high altitude, cold, arid desert with a Martian topography. So after seeing all these pictures and all these processes, I think you should agree with me that it has the Martian topography. It features some of the best sites to study astrogeology and astrobiology. Astrogeology with its unique geological setting, and astrobiology with its unique environments. extreme cold conditions, no vegetation, it's high altitude and a desertic environment. The geomorphic features and the vast exposures of sediments they can be helpful in generating data on paleoclimate, climate modeling, tectonics, Earth surface processes, and help us to understand the Martian geomorphology better. So the hot springs and the sulfur deposits, the saline lakes, the permafrost, and they can help us in to understand the extremophiles in these varied environments. So when we do a fidelity test, we feel that, Ladakh has 100% geomorphological fidelity for studying Mars, and 100% fidelity for studying the geochemical things of Mars. And of course, we have the permafrost, and we can study these organisms. Well, the exploration conditions, we've never done anything of that sort, but if we have some kind of a research base in Ladakh, so that could be tested as well. So all these things they have started talking in the groups when we did this NASA Spaceward Bound India program in 2016, where the scientists, educators, students from different countries, 31 of us, we went to Ladakh, and these NASA Spaceward Bound programs, they have been taking place in different analog sites of the world: the Mojave Desert, Idaho, then Pilbara, Namib Desert, and then we went to Ladakh with an objective to understand the diversity of life in extreme environments, and then also doing some real-time and hand-on science training programs, and for educators and researchers, and then just see where the area. So the activities conducted there were the field validation of ExoMars 2020 habit instrument. Then the hot springs were studied for origin of life and carbon metabolism, hot spring thermophiles. Then microbial life and the Soaker Lake was done. Then placement of artificial hypoliths here to study the microbial growth was done. Then there was regolith mapping of the Soaker site and log glaciers. We also did some outreach and teacher training program in the local schools of Ladakh. So all this work was published in the International Journal of Astrobiology by Pandit et al. 2020. So it's a good paper to just have a review of Mars as a terrestrial analog. And this was how like a small group of people in India working in different institutes have come together and formed a society called Society of Astrobiology Education and Research, SABER, which is, of course, it's conceived, but because of the lockdown, it's still, the birth is still there. So it was just delayed because of the lockdown. So when we see Ladakh, we know we have the glaciers, we have permafrost, we have lakes, we have Paleolakes, we have abandoned rivers, we have all clues to understand the Martian landscape, sedimentation, and microscopic life better. So so many types of environments is there. So Ladakh is a perfect connect and a clue to Mars. So it would be really nice if a permanent station, we can come up with a India analog research station at Ladakh, where people from different streams, whether they're geomorphologists or geologists or microbiologists, they can, or engineers and space robotic, people, they can come under one place and then carry out the experiments, at one center. With this, I like to thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to talk on this platform. And a special thanks to Ranjan and Pragya and Anushri here, our astronaut, and Rakesh for sharing some pictures to present in this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Binita. We too wish that there is a permanent research station.
Yeah, I wish to. Any questions? I would be happy to answer them.
Yes. There is a question from Devadatta Das. Is it true that permafrost shrinkage in the near future will release deadly and unknown microbes into the environment, and that being dormant in it for several years?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really a big threat, because all this time it has been frozen, and these wood. That is why it's time for us to study, especially the microbiologists. They're going there and studying this, like what danger can it pose, whether they are like in it's
Hello.
microbiology study for these in these permafrost region. And I think ISRO and ISA Pune with Dr. Sudha Rajamani, they have programs and they've taken in samples, and they are, at least they've started work at at one level, at the initial level. They've started that doing that work. So I hope the microbiologists take it up, and because very sure he's right that these can pose a threat also.
Oh, nice. Okay. In your Google Meet chat screen, you got 3 questions.
Okay, just
fine. If not, I will read it for you.
No, I can read it. Yeah, glaciations are ceased billions of years ago. How do you correlate? Okay, yeah, like of course for Mars, Mars is actually older than Earth. Mars was formed somewhere about 4.6 billion years ago, and Earth was formed 4.5 billion years ago. But the pre-Noachian and the Noachian times, that is, I'm talking about 4.5 till 3.7 billion years ago. The crust was formed, and it was very dry, and there were impact craters and volcanoes and so on. But the period between 3.7 to 2.5, that we call as a Hesperian age for Mars, so that was something like what the present Earth is. So we had oceans, we had some kind of fluvial channels and all. So the present Earth can be related to what was in Mars some 3.7 to 2.9 million years ago. And as of today, Mars is like, it's very cold, and it's uninhabitable. There is the atmosphere is very thin, and these solar winds, they just swept away all the atmosphere in the last 2.9 billion years. So it's as of today, it's like dry and very cold. So researchers do take over, and the glaciations that were that he's saying are ceased billions of years ago. So we could just at least study them, like how were they seized, what led them to the seizing, so that the Mars became like this. Will our Earth be like this in the future? Like I don't know. So these are the clues that we find in these. That is why it's important to study them and to correlate them. So okay, the second part is there any dry river, lake or bed, Ladakh to compare? Yeah, there are several lakes, Paleolakes, several of them. I can send you some of our paper publications. Like there were lakes of the size of like 40 kilometers, which are not today. You've seen the Pangong. So if you've seen the Pangong, it's a huge valley lake. It's like 144 kilometers, and 40 kilometers is with us. That's India, and the rest is with China, Tibet. And then what our researchers tell us, that towards the western side, this lake existed for some 80 kilometers more, and today it's breached. So we have these Paleolake deposits all along the rivers, and then we can find them. So you can you can study that, and they can be compared to that with Mars. And then the second question here I see is, Ladakh has hot springs, glacial lakes, etc., but current Mars don't have any, means they are dried. Then how do you explore astrobiology environment, and where do you look for the microbial microbial evidences of Mars. There are evidences from Mars that there are polar caps, yeah, they're frozen. There is some water. You have photographs even from Mangalyaan. There were some photographs of the water vapor. So there is kind of water there. So that there in those places we would look for the microbial activity in Mars. And then in the craters, the craters like the Lunar crater, for example, in India. So it is there are several such basaltic crater in Mars also. So if we study the basaltic crater there, we can see if we are getting some microbial things, and we study the magnetotactic bacteria and the microbes. So we can just select those sites to for our rovers to land, so that we can study the microbes from there. So I hope I have answered your question. Then I go to the third question. Is there any large-scale regional mapping carried out in the permafrost locations in Ladakh region? I am not, no, there is not, no large-scale mapping done. But ISRO had done some, some of the colleagues from SAC Ahmedabad. We had visited Ladakh with them, and with a project of, it was a pilot project for the mapping the permafrost locations. So I hope that program, comes up with a bigger project so that these areas can be mapped, because it's very essential to carry out the permafrost, to map the permafrost in the Ladakh region. So on the whole, the Tibetan Plateau has been done, but we don't have any figures for the Ladakh region, because when I go to Changla, that is the higher passes, 5,000 meters, there I see permafrost at also 80 centimeters. But when I come down to some places below in altitude, then I see permafrost at even 130 centimeters. So there's a variation, and there would be a variation because the topography varies. So that is there. But, an exact mapping has not been done, and it can only be done, it's not, we cannot do it manually, because we field scientists, we have our limitations. It can only be done by this, satellite data or satellite programming, which, I think, the ISRO and can do it, of course. Yes, Dr. Bhalla, I think I've answered the 3 questions. Any more?
Yes, there is a thanks from the...
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there is the next question from Arundita Das.
Yeah.
Are there any features that show the presence of lithospheric plates on Mars in past?
Oh, the picture that I showed you of everything, the bedrock is a lithospheric plate. Everything, the Ladakh batholith that I showed you of the Ladakh range, it is the magmatic emplacement. Then we had this when there was a subduction going on. Then the entire Janskar region, you have these folds and falls. They are parts of that lithosphere, that was there. So we have this towards the Indian side as the Central Himalaya, Lesser Himalayan mountains. Then we have this Tethan Himalayas, which are more sediments of the Tethys Sea, and then Trans Himalayas, which I was showing, it was more of a the Asian plate. So all these are remnant of those lithospheric plates only.
Right. Okay. I have some question which is sent to me here.
Yeah.
What is the most challenging place in Ladakh?
Okay, I think Ladakh itself is like very challenging, but because of the the tourists that are coming in, and Leh is becoming a very nice place. So now you have no difficulty at all in staying. But I remember my previous expeditions, like 20 years back, when we had to, we were there for two months. We were there in our vehicles right from Lucknow. We used to just drive to Leh, be there, and And then we had tents in our vehicles. We used to, wherever there was like, okay, evening, so let's pitch up our tents. We had a cooking a stove and all. So this was like 10 years back. We used to do fieldwork like that. But today it's no Leh area is very good. You have all amenities. There's a Wi-Fi, so you can just imagine you are connected to the world. Otherwise, we used to leave a message in the post office that we are here, and the fax used to come. So now only, and because of the BRO, the road organization, beautiful roads are there, and you can reach even the furthest of places like Kargil towards the west. You can just reach in 5 hours. Otherwise, we used to take 13 hours. So things are getting good there. But if you're trekking, of course, then things become challenging for you, because then you are walking in a terrain which is low in oxygen, and then you really you have to be very physically fit also, and then you have to have that kind of a passion also. So nothing is challenging. I think for the young people, nothing is challenging, and whatever challenges are there, you have to face them, and they become good memories when you come back. So I think they pay you a lot.
Oh, I see. To add to this question, are there any unexplored regions in Ladakh?
Yeah, many. I think the Chumathang region, geologically, people have, we have a very good geological map and all that. But very few groups are working in Ladakh itself. So as for the Karakoram region, Ladakh is very strategic. The position is very strategic. You go towards the east, you're being caught in the, China border. You go towards the west, then Pakistan is coming, So we are not allowed permits for certain places that you really want to explore, but those are with the field work point of view, those are unexplored still. But the other regions like the river valleys of Indus, Shyok, Nubra, to some extent they have been studied well.
Okay, nice. There's one more question.
Yes.
Our colleague, Dr. Vijayan. It is on your Gmeet window. Groundwater sapping in Ladakh are sourced due to snow percolation. What is the source of Mars groundwater sapping?
Okay, groundwater sapping in snow, and what is the source? Okay, Mars, of course, it had water once upon a time, yeah. So the sapping there was also. They are a clue that we had water once upon a time in Mars at that location.
Dr. Binita,
Yeah.
I think we lost about 30 seconds of your answer because the voice was not there. We can't hear you.
Okay. The last one, groundwater sapping.
Yes, please.
Okay, I was telling that in Mars, when we saw such features, then we could easily relate it to the groundwater sapping. So it is the other way, other way around. That these features on Mars are clues to the presence of water there. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So there's one more question.
Yes.
On astrogeology. Can you please detail on that?
Yeah, I didn't talk much about astrogeology because, I was doing more of geomorphology, and astrogeology is basically, the rock type and all. So we know that in Mars, there are rocks with lots of quartz and silica in it. And because, it's very hard for us just now that we don't have any samples from Mars. Only the meteoritic samples from Mars are there. And we still don't have rovers that can bring us rocks, tell us about what exactly the geology or the constituent of the rocks are there. So but we know from the Pathfinder that there are lots of silica-based rocks, and they come from different parent material. So what I mean by parent material is that when igneous rocks are formed, they can be intrusives. They could just be like the lava which has not come up, the molten material that has not come up to the surface, and they can be volcanics which have come up to the surface. So their origin is different. So to astrogeology, they study this differentiation. So astrogeologists, they study this differentiation and the different kind of rocks that are found there. So that is astrogeology.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And they also dated by uranium-lead dating, that how many years before it was, But because you've seen our rovers, and there you cannot put all kind of machine that they can tell us the exact age of those rocks they are like passing over, or drilling, or telling us the chemical constituent about. So maybe in years to come, with perseverance that's a very good, that has so many things in it. So maybe we get very good data from the astrogeological point of view also.
When we talk about the astrogeological part, the rocks and all the minerals, there's a question from Rajesh. Okay, can you comment on the minerals on Mars to be probed for microbes or microbial colonies?
I don't think so, because so much of data has not come from Mars. So our knowledge about it is very, very limited, and we are just studying the microbes and the microbial colonies on these analog sites here, whether it be the hot springs or the volcanoes or the craters or the permafrost grounds and all. And then we are trying to just extrapolate our knowledge on the terrestrial analogues to the Mars surface. So I really do not know like which kind of like in Ladakh, I can talk about Ladakh, of course. Like the batholith or the granitic rock there, when you go there, you'll see a lot of lichens, active lichens there. So it is a lichenophilic kind of rock, because lichens are getting some kind of nutrients from it. So such rocks where there would be such minerals which would activate or accelerate the life will obviously attract these microbes. But in Mars, because the data is not there, so I really do not know what to say.
Okay, I think